Hi there, welcome back to Monaco Solicitors YouTube channel, or if you're watching this on our website, another video in the series of consultations that we're doing for people who have called up with inquiries and very kindly agreed that we're okay to put these on our website to help anyone watching at home with a similar problem. Obviously, we've changed the names and we've even changed the voices of the people involved. So it's nice and anonymized. So with me today is my most recent new inquiry, Amy. How are you doing, Amy?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for calling up, and thanks for agreeing to do this as well. If I can just summarize your situation, and then you please tell me in your own words afterwards. But from what I've understood here from your case details form, which you filled in on our website, is that you're looking to leave your job with a settlement agreement. You've been treated badly. Your employer hasn't followed the policy. They gave you a disciplinary and dismissed you, but then a few minutes later they changed their decision. It was something to do with food that was going out of date in the fridges, which you donated to the homeless, which the manager said was fine, potentially then changed their mind. You're currently signed off work by your GP, and you're now awaiting the next meeting, and you were promised to receive the witness statements and the evidence by last week, but you still haven't received this. So the circumstances you're in as well, you've been employed for less than 2 years as well, which we'll talk about whether or not that's going to be possible to actually overcome that, because that can be a bit of an insurmountable obstacle sometimes in employment law, as you know, probably from our website, right? But do you want to just give me in your own words, your kind of a brief description of what happened, please?
It was literally exactly as you said, and it was just everything is as you said, but it's just as soon as he dismissed me, I did tell him, I think that this is an unfair dismissal because back then I hadn't had any kind of legal help. I hadn't spoken to anyone because I was so scared and just so shy of the whole situation and so embarrassed because that's how they made me feel. Um, so I didn't get any help. All I did was just look on a few websites, and I thought that I might, possibly have been treated unfairly. So as soon as I raised this issue, um, he then went and I believe he spoke to possibly HR or another manager, um, who had done the initial investigation, and he came back and he apologized to me. He said he's very sorry and that I was correct. Um, and I was promised that I would receive everything, all the evidence, um, even the
Yeah,
notes from that day, and
right.
nothing, and I didn't receive
So,
anything.
so you were disciplined for giving food to the homeless. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes, that's correct.
So the food's going out of date in the fridge,
Yes,
and you got the all clear from someone in management
yes,
or not? Yeah, already you got the all clear. Took it out and gave it to people who live on the streets.
yeah, homeless people.
Okay, and you got in trouble for that.
Yeah, that's literally what they said. That's exactly what they said. And
That's
the
strange, isn't it?
Yeah, the worst thing is that the company that I work for, their biggest, motto, their biggest thing that they talk about is how they give back to the community, how they
Right.
always want to help the environment, things like
Yeah.
that. And what hurt me the most is even though I haven't been there for, as long as, I've been there for I think around 8 months. In those eight
Yeah.
months, the number of times that I've witnessed, food going to the bin when I know that the company, we're always told to recycle, to do this, to, give back to the community. So it really shocked me that they've done this
Yeah.
because I thought, if anything, they would have used this as an example and and spoke well about it and not give me a disciplinary or dismiss me. I genuinely didn't
Yeah.
think that it would ever
Yeah.
come to this.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult because legally, I mean, obviously, that's hypocrisy the way you've described it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not surprised because we see corporate hypocrisy every day in this job. But it's never easy to accept. Still, legally, we've got to talk about where you are. So you've been employed for less than 2 years, which means you don't have any unfair dismissal rights or constructive dismissal rights. In other words, you could be unfairly dismissed and you wouldn't have any legal claim in order to go back against the company for that. So that means that normally in these situations, one has to look at other possible avenues. Discrimination is one, but there's no real discrimination for discriminating against someone who wants to help the homeless. It's not really a philosophical belief in the same thing. I don't know if you were aware recently, but veganism has now been classified as a philosophical belief that you could find that you were being discriminated against if you were vegan, for example. So that's a new one for the list. But this, I don't think this relates to a specific philosophical belief. You're just trying to do the right thing here. So discrimination, difficult. And then looking at whistleblowing, well, whistleblowing is another thing that you don't need 2 years service for. So discrimination and whistleblowing are the two main ones. There are a few niche ones as well. So whistleblowing, could you have a whistleblowing claim? Whistleblowing tends to be where you flagged something up to management about something that was unlawful, illegal, against public interest. And here, it's not that you flagged this up to management, so you weren't victimized for blowing the whistle here. You were victimized for doing something. And was it unlawful? Well, their behavior, throwing out food, is not unlawful. Maybe it should be. I mean, who knows? Maybe it will be one day.
Hopefully.
Uh, well, yeah, I mean, when people wake up to what's happening with the environment and when the government does something about it, maybe it will be. At the moment, it's not. Is it contrary to public policy? I don't think you could argue that, because a lot of judges would look at this and they'd say, well, we don't want to put red tape on companies and tie companies' hands and make companies give away their food to the homeless, because um, the way the system here is set up and the way judges think is that they would put companies first because they put the economy first, almost ahead of the actual people who make up the economy, like yourselves, like individuals like yourselves, ironically. So what are you left with here? Your options? Well, you could try to bargain a settlement on the basis that, well, you think this could be a newsworthy story, and you'd want to approach the newspapers unless you were given a settlement agreement to tide you over until you got a new job. The slight problem with that is that you've got to be careful that you're not kind of edging towards blackmail. I know that sounds extreme, but blackmail itself is unlawful. So it's not really something that the law in this country caters for in your situation. I would say if you had 2 years service, then definitely you could definitely argue here that this was constructive dismissal, or you could have let them dismiss you and it would have been actual unfair dismissal if they'd actually dismissed you.
Can I
So you
just
would.
ask you something else though? The,
Sure.
so in sorry, in the company's procedure, it says that the dismissal procedure, it doesn't say anything about 2 years of service. Now it looks like they do follow, I believe it's the ACAS
Yeah.
code. I believe that is what they follow. But in their
Yeah.
own policy, it says nothing about 2 years of service, and it
Yeah.
clearly states that. So my issue was that I wasn't given any of the evidence prior to the hearing,
Yeah.
or even in the hearing. Now,
Yeah.
on the company website and even in the papers, it states
Right.
clearly that they have to provide me with all the evidence, all the notes,
Okay.
everything.
So three things here, I think. One is that they did give you your job back, so they didn't actually dismiss you, so that you don't really have a financial loss right now. Um, Secondly, yeah, it doesn't say in the policy about it being over 2 years, so you could argue that there was a breach of contract. So they have breached your contract here. But then your question of what we call remedy, which is what you're entitled to do about it or what you could get in terms of compensation, is much more difficult, because yes, there's a breach on one hand, but on the other hand, there's no loss, you see, because there's no financial loss. So your remedy there wouldn't be any financial compensation in terms of remedy for that. So the third point I wanted to just mention is regarding your notice period. How long is your notice period?
My notice period, I believe, is 2 weeks.
2 weeks? So potentially you could leave and ask them to pay your notice, and you could, ask for 2 weeks money, and you don't want to work another day because of this and because of all the breaches. I don't know if you're looking to leave for sure or whether you're just looking at your options.
The thing is, I didn't want to leave before the dismissal. I was kind of hopeful that I could go back to my job because I did love my job, and I even said it multiple times in the hearing. I love my job. The reason why I work for the company is because of all the policies that they put forward. And honestly, the way that they have treated me, it makes me not want to go. Um, and I also wanted to add that I do believe they have discriminated against me because I suffer from depression, and this is something that they were well aware of. Um, and I, another reason why I believe they have discriminated against me is because another member of staff, another colleague, the exact same thing is happening to him. But as soon as I raised up the issue of it being an unfair dismissal, um, they gave him, on the exact same day, they gave him all the evidence, all the paperwork, they called him in,
Right.
and his um, his hearing was scheduled for the Monday, so they gave everything to him, but just not to me.
Right, okay. That's interesting. So depression is capable of being classified as a disability under the Equality Act 2010 if it's something that lasts for more than 12 months.
Okay.
And then you've got to look at whether you're saying it's direct discrimination or indirect. Now, direct would mean they would have to be saying, right, let's get Amy and let's treat her badly because she's suffering from depression. So they specifically going after people suffering from depression as as because they don't like them because they're suffering from depression. So that's direct discrimination. Indirect would be that the way they're conducting themselves indirectly discriminates against people with depression because it makes it harder for people with depression to it makes it less favorable for them. It makes conditions for them more difficult to get along. So in this case, from what you're saying, I'm guessing it would be the second one.
Okay. But
Or do you think they're
how would I show
or
that this has happened?
right? But just to clarify, you're not saying they're going after you. They're sort of victimizing you because you're suffering from depression
This is the
in the
thing.
first
I
place.
honestly don't know because yesterday I reached out to the manager and I asked
Yeah,
for all the paperwork, all the evidence, because I
yeah,
emailed him and I said it's been 5 days now. And because I also called up the HR department and I told them that I'm not happy
yeah.
with what's happened. Um, and, I have been advised to raise a grievance against the
Okay,
managers because of the breach of contract. And the
interesting.
HR told me that I have 5 working days from Friday to put forward that appeal, which means that the appeal would actually have to be done today and sent off.
Wow. Well, you might write to them today asking for more time and saying that because you're off sick, you've not been well enough to do this. So that you could say that you're suffering from depression, and that as a reasonable adjustment, you'd like more time. So you're giving them notification that that's happening to you, and because they do need to be aware of that, or were they aware of that already?
Well, they are aware of the fact that I have depression already because I've
Okay.
also submitted it. I've gone to my doctor and I've got a sick note, so I've been
Yeah,
signed off
yeah,
sick, and they
and
are
it's
well aware.
and it says on the sick note for depression. Yeah.
Yeah, it says depression, severe
Okay.
anxiety.
Okay. Right. Well, I'm sorry you're going through that, and I hope you feel better
Thank you so much.
soon. Maybe you will after this is over.
I
This,
honestly hope so.
episode. Hope so. So one of the things you can do is put in a data subject access request, which is where you effectively write into them and asking them to send you the HR file, but they would also have to send you any emails, internal emails about you, even WhatsApps. Any internal correspondence, if they use Slack or internal messaging, SMS, there's details of how to do that on our website on monacosolicitors.co.uk. And there's templates on there that you can download for free and you can adapt. So send off one of those, and then in 40 days they'd have to give you the HR file. And maybe in there might be some evidence you're looking for to say, oh, we think we need to get rid of Amy because she's suffering from depression. Generally, if you're not sure if it's discrimination or not, generally it probably isn't, because most people suffering from discrimination are aware of that they're being discriminated against, and it can be quite heinous and quite deliberate, and that's the kind of classic discrimination case. So if someone's not sure, and it might be, it's probably unlikely to be that, but you can still put in a data subject access request. Would make their lives a bit more difficult anyway, and you can put in a formal written grievance as well, and set out how badly you feel like you've been treated, and you can say that how it's affected you regarding your depression. During that process, of course, they may take you to one side and say, look, Amy, how can we, come to some sort of arrangement here? Perhaps we can give you a month's pay or something like that, you know, in order to kind of draw a line under this, and then for you to move on with a decent reference or something like that. Might tide you over until you're able to get another job, because you have been treated badly and you have had your contract breached, and it's just unfortunate that it's difficult to do anything about it directly, but in a sort of indirect way you can make the circumstances, you can make their lives difficult in return. And then some companies, especially bigger companies, perhaps would want to offer you a settlement just to make their lives easier.
Yeah, no,
Does that sound like
definitely. Yeah,
yeah?
I feel like the reason why I feel like they have discriminated against me is because I can't think of another reason why they haven't sent me the evidence and they've sent it to someone else as soon as I raise the issue. That's honestly, it frustrates me. It makes me so angry because why shouldn't I be given something that you know their own policy states I'm more than entitled to? And the incident took place now over a month ago, and there's
Right.
still this. It just
Yeah.
shocks me.
Yeah, and it is and I think you should ask them. I mean, I do think you should ask. The fact is, there could be many reasons why they haven't done that. It could be just inept, or it might be in a big company. It could be a different HR person dealing with it. The one who dealt with your colleague, maybe there was a super efficient, decent HR person. Maybe the one that dealt with your case isn't very good or doesn't know about the
That's the
timeline.
thing.
So
Everything was dealt with by the exact same person.
interesting. Well, all I'm saying is that as humans, we have a tendency to think that we affect our environment and that everything comes down to us. And actually, most of the time, things are circumstances beyond our control. There are many different things that affect the current situation that we find ourselves in, and it doesn't always relate back to us as individuals. Often, it relates to many different individuals and many different circumstances, some of which are completely unforeseen. So I'm just saying it might be that, but it might not be. So I would encourage you to ask them, and to it sounds like you'd feel better at least if you submitted agreements, perhaps, or informally asked them about it. You might get that off your chest, and at least get some answers here.
Yeah.
So then you know what to do next, and whether you can go back to work with them or not.
I don't think I want to go back to work after this because I've actually called them
Mm.
and I've asked my own manager and I said, how come this has happened? And all they said to me is, we're so sorry, we can't talk about it because we're now involved. So they definitely
Right.
know that they've breached contract and they know what they've done. It's just they don't want to.
Okay.
What I feel is that they're just trying to keep as quiet as they can about it in order to avoid the problem getting any bigger than it already is.
Okay. Well, then escalate it. You know,
Yeah.
like we said, do that, and see where it gets you, and see what you want to do when you get some answers.
No, I definitely will. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure. Well, thank you, and best of luck with it all. Hope
Thank
it
you
goes
so much.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And you can get some grievance templates and things like that off our website as well to help you with that.
Thank you. I'll definitely have
All
a
right.
look.
All right. Good luck, Amy. Take care.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Right. Well, thanks for tuning in for another consultation here on Monaco Solicitors. If any of these issues that affected Amy affect your case or your life, feel free to get in touch with us. You can put a comment under the video here on the YouTube channel, or just get in touch with us through our website. Either way, go onto our YouTube channel, give us a like for this video and subscribe to our channel. And you can find details of our website in the description there too. Thanks very much.